Hello everyone, this is Dungeon Master Boba coming at you guys with another video. This time, we're going to be talking about more tips for Dungeon Masters, particularly how to breathe more life into vampires and werewolves in your Dungeons & Dragons games. Playing a lot of World of Darkness recently, and particularly a lot of Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse, and it made me look at Dungeons & Dragons and say, wow, they are not very lycanthropes and vampires are not very fleshed out in World of Darkness, when Dungeons & Dragons. So I thought I'd make a video on how to incorporate some of that more fleshed out feel to the creatures in your world. First and foremost, if you have World of Darkness and you like it, with a few tweaks, you could import the werewolf tribes and vampire clans over into your Dungeons & Dragons game with a few tweaks, but if you don't, then that's probably why you clicked on this video. And so you can do it like this. There's different, in World of Darkness, the way they do it is there's different clans and tribes. You can kind of do that for a werewolf and vampires and Dungeons & Dragons. Like, before I even had World of Darkness, one thing I did is I played around with the werewolf stats, and made them a little bit stronger so that they would pose a little more threat to the party, and I also made a tribe of barbarians be all werewolves. They're all like pure breed, purebred. They're all full wolves, natural born lycanthropes, an entire tribe of them, where they have their whole little tribal structure and everything, and that's very similar to how Werewolf does it. And that's something you can do for the werewolves. You can make them, I thought they were in 3rd edition at least, a little 3 and 2.5. They were a little weak for well, I mean, for low levels they're fine, but your characters start getting higher up in levels, you kind of got to buff them up a bit, or they kind of, your players just like barrel through them. I made it so that only silver weapons that bypass their damage reduction, not +1 weapons or anything, just because that by the time your players are getting up there, they'll have like, depending on your DMing style, by the time your players are like level 7 or 8 or something like that, then they'll probably already have +1 or +2 weapons, which would bypass the werewolf's damage reduction normally, but I changed it so that those magic weapons don't bypass it, and only silver bypasses it. That includes in case wizards want to throw spells at them and stuff, they can soak up more spell damage, and you just be a formidable foe through the levels, and you can adjust their stats with the human stats, or elf, or whatever. Werewolf was turned in whatever the human or base race is, you can adjust their stats, level them up, have like level 10 fighter turn into a werewolf, or level 10 barbarian turn into a werewolf, and then that would be quite the fight, especially if the only way they can hurt them is with silver, which means they gotta put away their fancy weapons and spells they've been relying on for so long. Well, the spells might still do some damage if they roll really high on damage, but because the damage reduction, I run a damage reduction of 15, and I think that is with some health regeneration. That you might think that's pretty powerful, but that's the thing. I want the werewolves to be very scary creatures and be like a big boss encounter type thing if they do finally face down with one. And then there's always a threat of being turned to a werewolf, and then your players get that feeling of, oh, nothing can stop me in the world. And then there's werewolf hunters who adorn themselves in silver armor and weapons and whatnot, who can come hunt them down. And I think there's rules for spells, and you can craft some spells that maybe the spell uses silver, like you use a material component on a fireball or something like that, like some really valuable silver, like some pure silver or something like that, or whatever the most valuable silver is in your world, and you use a bunch of it on a fireball spell as a material component, and you can turn the fireball into having like half the damage be silver damage, like silver fire, like almost like a molten silver part of it, for battling the werewolves. And also you can have it be so that the werewolves aren't always lone wolves. Wolves in real life travel in packs, and you can do a pack mentality with werewolves. Now, a whole pack of werewolves would definitely be something to consider for a higher level campaign. If you're running somebody around level 15 or something like that, where they have the availability to get what they need, and you run them their new stats, like I said, giving them a damage reduction 15 against anything that's not silver. They'll still be able to hurt them without silver, but then give them their health regeneration, and they'll be regenerating it about as fast as trolls, and it'll be basically a very akin to a troll fight, except instead of using fire, they'd have to use some silver. And then, depending on how you want to work it, the werewolves could do more or less damage than they say in the book, based on your party. It'd be especially troublesome for a party of fighters or melee people if they didn't have silver, where the mages could, I guess, if you use a level 15 mage using a fireball, he without the silver material component, he could do some damage to the werewolf. But then again, a raging barbarian could also do a little damage, but the fight would go on for a while with the werewolf most likely winning because of his regeneration. But if they get some good crits on them or something, they might still be able to will them down even without silver, in case your characters are too hard-headed to understand what's going on, and you could actually like use it as a lesson to tell them that they're not the biggest and baddest things in the world. And I think that's a really good thing for mechanically speaking on werewolves. As for the pack mentality thing, maybe they're not all savage, chaotic, evil creatures like the book says. Maybe they have a purpose. Maybe these werewolves are trying to help these people, but they're succumbing to frenzies and stuff like that, and they're accidentally killing people that they were supposed to be trying to protect, and the players try to attack them, and they're misguided. The players are misinformed about what the werewolves are doing, and they have like these werewolves are killing people, but they're trying to help at the same time, and maybe you can help them overcome their bestial sides and stuff, and then you can take them on to a whole spiritual side of the werewolf thing, like the wolf and the human or elf or whatever are two different things, and they could do a bunch of stuff with trying to help them, or if they're players, trying to control their wolf side. And it could all make for some interesting role playing, especially if you take them back to like a werewolf's village or something, and they see the werewolf culture, how they've evolved around being werewolves and just doing everything about how to how they've evolved around. They if they want to hunt something, they just change into their wolf form or their werewolf form, and they go out and hunt it, and they don't really need the hunting's weapons, bows and spears and whatnot that normally used. And also you can determine whether or not these tribes think humans are inferior, or they long to be human again, and all this, and you can just go deep into that, make rival tribes, and make it so that one tribe loves humans, one tribe hates humans, and then they're like clashing like that. Maybe some of them use humans for breeding stock to produce new werewolves and whatnot. And like I said, if you have the Werewolf the Apocalypse, you can import those tribes over. A lot of what I've told you guys is similar to Werewolf the Apocalypse, but it's different enough that if your players have played it before, you can keep things fresh and interesting. Um, as far as vampires go, you can have them have different sects or clans, as they're called in Vampire the Masquerade. You can have like different organizations of vampires. Perhaps one of the vampires can walk in the sun. Maybe one of them are immune to steaks. Maybe one's immune to garlic or running water. And you can break the stereotype, just shatter the mold of vampires, and make your players think that this, and this work on them, and then completely surprise them when they drag this guy out into the sun and he's not affected by it. Or if they run a stake through him and he keeps coming, but then have them fight a completely different vampire who does get burned by the sun, or who is affected by stakes, or is affected by running water, and just take a look at all the weaknesses in the book, or make up some of your own weaknesses from media and culture and games and movies and whatnot, and then break them down into different clans. Give each of the clans their own unique powers, not just the ones in the book. Make up your own powers. Look deep into vampire lore in real life and see what the stories say the vampires have. Make some of them have those powers and the other ones not have them. How do the vampires deal with their cattle, their human cattle? Do they just go out into the streets and take them, or do they seduce them, or buy like slave operations and whatnot? And maybe there's politicking between the vampires for control of cities and control of mortal pawns and whatnot. And you can really play up the vampire superiority complex, how they think they're above everyone. And you can play up the werewolf versus vampire war. Is kind of a cliche, but you can think of a real cool reason of why they're fighting rather than, oh, I don't like you, we're gonna fight now. You can weave a whole campaign around werewolf and vampire conflict. If you think of a good story, maybe the vampires are trying to this is taken blatantly from World of Darkness, by the way, guys. If maybe the vampires are trying to expand their cities and destroying the werewolves' natural habitat, in the process of the werewolves strike back at the vampires for trying to expand their reaches and whatnot. And oh, I thought somebody was coming in, but never mind. And like I was saying with the vampires, make them have a good damage reduction as well. But I keep the damage reduction against magic items there so that people can hurt them with magic. But if you want, you can change it to that they only say a certain type of vampire isn't hurt by magic items and only hurt by fire, or a certain type is higher damage reduction than the others, and maybe one has a stronger domination ability, but this one has a stronger combat ability, and then just weave it and make your players confused, make them scared, make them have to actually do research on the vampires. And you do the same for werewolves as well. Give different ones different powers and damage reductions and attack speeds and all that good stuff. And also as the vampires get older, you can have them. I've seen this in a lot in different lores, and in World of Darkness, have them start having to feed on vampire blood instead of human blood. Which, if your players are vampires, they might have to worry about the really old, really powerful vampires hunting them instead of humans. So that could be a nice plot hook there. I ran a game where my players started off as vampires, and they just worked their way through the ranks and everything, and eventually they were hunted down by vampire hunters and whatnot. They had to do battles with vampire hunters, which were paladins and clerics and whatnot, which can make for very interesting uses of turn undead, and also throw away the stereotype that vampires are chaotic evil. I hate the stereotypes of vampires and werewolves being chaotic evil in Dungeons & Dragons. It's so much funner to run a game where they can be neutral, lawful evil, or even one of the neutral alignments, or maybe even there's a vampire like Louis off of the book Interview with a Vampire, who doesn't even want to be a vampire, and they're like a more chaotic or neutral good, maybe even a lawful good vampire, maybe a vampire paladin who's trying to atone for becoming a vampire, trying to cure his vampirism, and that could be a whole quest line there that the players could help or hinder with. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with vampires and werewolves and Dungeons and Dragons. Just take the core books or the monster manuals or whatever, read them, see what powers you like, modify them, bring them up, bring them down, build lore behind them, make different sects for each of them, and make reasons why they could fight each other, make reasons why they would fight the mortals, make reasons why they would fight your players, and then you could run entire campaigns around this stuff, especially if you want a more horror themed gothic style campaign. But this video's been pretty long, so I'm just gonna say this is Dungeon Master Blowba signing off, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, favorite, subscribe, and thank you for supporting my channel. Have a good one.